Okay, welcome everyone to this week's episode of KUDEN Radio Podcast. Pick a name, any name. People usually do anyway. So, Daisha Miller here from Warrior Concepts. We've got James in the wings as usual. It's episode 220, and we're going to be talking about how to become a master, how to be a master, something like that, right? And so, we're going to look at this concept of mastery or becoming a master. I want to take a look at a couple of perspectives. One, uh, typically the way it would be seen in Japan, China, the ancient world, how past masters would have how past PAST masters would have passed PASSED in English, wonderful, right? Down to us. But I also want to take a look at what science shows and maybe something that's also hidden in plain sight. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see about that. But what I do want to do is we'll go through this, and I'm going to give you three ways. I'm going to give you three exercises that will help with this whole process. Right. I can just warning shot across the bow. Naval terms here. Probably not going to be what anybody expects, but there's a lot in this process that isn't what we would ever expect. So I will kick that off as soon as we get back. So let's roll the intro. Question is this: how are self-defense and success-minded people like us, concerned citizens worried about protecting ourselves, our loved ones, and the things we care about from the monsters we know exist in the world? How do we train in a way that gives us the skills, knowledge, and understanding we need without becoming paranoid fighters or killers ourselves, and yet still allows us to be the hero protector the world needs us to be? That's the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Jeffrey Miller, and welcome to KUDEN Radio, real training for real people in a real world. All right, that's a bold statement, but I've been saying it for years. So I've also been saying, let's see, we came up with a slogan. When I say we, I mean I. Spent a long process going through trying to understand here's a big word for you, the psychographics, right? The way my best student, right? If I had a model of one, the way they tend to think, what they're attracted to, what they're not. This led into colors, shapes. It's why the logo is what it is. It wasn't just because like I flipped a coin and threw two things together and went, oh, that looks cool. It's supposed to speak, right, to the person who is an ideal, would be an ideal student, right? At least in that direction. So anyway, right. So we're taking a look at this idea of mastery, right? What the ancients say about it, what science says about it, literally answering the question, right? How to become a master. And there are a lot of assumptions, but even though the ancients didn't have the science to back it up today, there were just very specific things that were done. Even Hatsumi Sensei, right? There's certain things that he has taught, one specifically, right, that just sums it all up. But the cool thing for us, right, one of the cool things, even though there are lots of impediments that didn't exist before, I'll talk about at least one of those during this episode. The cool thing is that we don't have to just blindly believe things because Sensei said, right? Or because it's in the scrolls and they're unquestioning, or they're not to be questioned, or whatever, right? So we have science and discoveries and those kind of things. And I know that new discoveries are made all the time. Some discoveries are made and it makes something else outdated. But that doesn't mean that we get to pick and choose what works and what doesn't. Okay. In Mikyo, we have this concept of ultimate universal truth, right? It's ultimate. It doesn't mean it's ultimate because we say so. It's not ultimate because, well, it's our belief system, so it has to be, that kind of thing. It means things are what they are, right? The what is, call it whatever you want. And even in Ninpo, we have this this phrase we used to use a long time ago to open classes, right? Ninpo ikan. Right? We didn't use the Shikin Haramitsu Daikomyo originally. We used Ninpo ikan. Ninpo, the way of the ninja, right? The truth of the ninja. Po is a transliter. It's not transliteration. It's a linguistic adjustment because the Japanese have a hard time saying nin ho, so it gets kind of contracted. Right? Not contracted, but it just gets altered. So ninpo, right? So po, or that ho kanji, means truth. It's as in like ultimate truth, right? In Sanskrit, we would say dharma. In Pali, we would say dhamma. But it's the same thing, right? It's this ultimate what is, right? And we're trying to translate it all the time based on the five senses we have, the judgment faculties that we have, the conceptualization faculties that we have, but also a bunch of other things, right? Belief systems and habit patterns and behaviors and those kind of things, right? That we believe is just as true as, whatever. And I'm not spending all this time going into that concept. That's what I do with my Nikkyo students. But that's that part. Nin, we understand nin, right? Right. Sometimes people translate that ninpo as, the ninja. No. Nin is to persevere, to endure, to keep going, right? Never quit. That kind of idea, right? And so the connection there is the law of the way of endurance, right? Because ho can be way as well, right? The way of enduring, right? Ikan is a contraction of ichi kan. Ichi, one, kan, way. Okay, wait, that's another way? Yeah, well, get used to it. Okay, so ikan is the one way, which points to universal truth. It points to nature, all of those kind of things, right? So what that translates to, again, roughly, right, could be the way of the ninjas, the way of the universe, the way of the, because ikan, that contraction in Japanese, just points to this big grand thing, right? So the way of the ninja is the one way. It's the universal way. It's the way of nature. But the law of endurance, right, is the law of nature, is the law of the universe. A couple episodes ago, or maybe it was last episode, I don't know, I mentioned that I was reporting in to a new unit way back in my military days, and I had to go see the operations sergeant, and he had this sign behind his desk, and there was somebody else with me. We were both reporting in at the same time, and he had us look behind him, and he said, "See that sign?" "Yes, Sergeant." "Can you read it?" Well, we were military police, which means that our aptitude test and our scores had to be higher than the average picnic basket stealing bear. So yes, I can read it. Right? I didn't say that because that's the quickest way to lose rank and lose money out of your pocket. And then he just said, "Do you understand it?" That kind of thing. But what was written on the sign was, flexibility is the key to longevity. Okay? Well, I think it's now, in looking back, I think it's one of the keys of longevity, right? The ability to adapt. Right? And one of the things that we human beings have that most animals don't, to a great degree, is the ability to adapt. I mean, we can completely change our surroundings, right? Animals can, beavers can build dams, and gophers can build, furrows and things like that, but they're not, at least to my knowledge, they're not inventing concrete and, making Gopher Town. That's kind of like Flavor Town, but different, right? So it's this ability to operate as close as possible to the way things work, to the way things operate. In Mikyo, one of the foundational lessons is the root of suffering, the root of discontent, the root of who knows, anger, confusion. There's a long list of these things, right? In Sanskrit, it's called dukkha. I know how funny that sounds because it sounds a lot like what it is, right? Shit. Okay. But that's the word for this long list of what it could possibly be: confusion, alienation, pain, discontent, dissatisfaction, whatever, right? But the cause of dukkha, the cause of shit, right, in Sanskrit is called trishna. Trishna means misdirected desire. Okay, what that means is I either want things that cannot be, or I want things to be a way they cannot be, even if it's just for the moment, right? Until something changes, it's not going to happen, right? Karmically, right? Cause and effect, that's just not going to happen, right? Or I want to avoid things that can't be avoided. And so we human beings run around, right? Inventing things, coming up with ideas and whatnot, in a never-ending attempt to make shit our way, regardless of the way natural law works. Okay, or whichever way you lean, right? The way God works, the way whatever. Okay. Speaking of that, I was thinking about that earlier. Right? I think a lot of people are choose to be atheist, right? Not because they don't necessarily believe that God or something bigger doesn't exist, but because they don't want to follow anybody's freaking rules. They want to do whatever they want. And if there's nobody to follow the rule, there's no rule giver, right? Then they can do whatever the hell they want. The problem is that regardless of whether God exists or not, right? And I'm not arguing the fact, right? Let's just be clear on that. Regardless of whether God exists or not, the universe and universal law, gravity, inertia, all that kind of stuff does, right? The way our cells operate, nothing changes. Okay? So anyway, so we're going to look into this idea of being a master. I've got some Japanese terms that are used to mean master. There's little nuances to them, and they kind of point in a certain direction. I have kind of a this versus that kind of thing with the way students would have dealt with this mastery process or path way back in the day, as opposed to the way they deal with it today, or can deal with it today, especially here in the West. Right? Got some science for you. I'm going to try to not make it egghead stuff. I'm going to try to keep this as simple as possible, right? But what I want to do is make sure that I'm giving you two sides of the same coin that has to do with here's how you make this work, okay? And then, like I said, I've got a couple of practical exercises at the end that you're going to do on your own. But anyway, so this would be a good time for me to remind people to please like, share, subscribe, pass things around to your friends and your best buds, or maybe you're not your best buds. Send it to somebody that you don't like, right? Get them as like fired up and not liking it as much as I don't know, maybe you do or don't. Okay? I'm going to talk a lot about do's and don'ts. So good bridge here. So James, who do we have on? Who's saying hi? Who do I need to be nice to? James is all stoic again. You see that? I don't know what the hell just happened. He got back from a vacation with the woman, and like before he left for a whole week, he was laughing and having a good time and talking, and now he gets back and it's been back plus day one, and he looks like he needs to punch somebody in the face. And I'm on this side of the computer, so I put major distance in there. Anyway. All right, James, who do we have?
That's like signed in, so to speak, is Dave, Fletch, and Trinity.
Awesome. Trinity, she's probably listening while she's driving. She's coming to visit for a week. So for those of you that are in the dojo, you get to beat her around for a while. Except tomorrow. Tomorrow we would normally have a big class, and tomorrow night's test night. So, yeah. That's it? Just those two? Oh!
said
numbers just like massively jump up.
Jimmy just said konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa. Ogenki desu ka?
And Dave
I'll
said,
wait. I was being polite. I asked him a question.
Right.
Hi, sensei. Genki desu. Arigato. Anata wa? Sorry. Dave said what?
the Air Force modified that to flexibility is the key to air power. It was on the promotion test.
Fair enough. It's the key to a lot of things, right? I mean, they've long since been debunking the whole Darwin thing because it's missing a key piece that people keep latching onto. But the reality is that the most flexible and adaptable tend to live longer. If you don't believe me, go look at all the people living in North Dakota. It's colder than shit up there. But we're a hardy bunch. So no, but if you're able to adapt, and Dave knows this, and all my vet friends know this, right? One of the getting out of basic training, right? You have to not let the drill sergeants, DIs, whatever you guys call them, into your head, right? Because if you make it personal, then you're already going to get washed out, unless that was your plan. Because their job is to replace the bullets and the shells and stuff that are going to be going off in a bad situation, to get you to be able to operate with being in that kind of state, right? Which is a part of martial arts as well, martial warfare, right? But one of the other things that people had to adjust to was the constant picking and goading from your fellow soldiers or airmen or Marines, or right. There's this constant like jabbing back and forth at each other, right? Name calling, all kinds of things that the easily triggered in the world would not like very much, right? But those who made it were the ones who were able to adapt to that and sling stuff back, or just let it roll off, or look and go, that's it, that's all you got, right? You're gonna have to come back with something better. It was a constant mental thing, and then the contest and the bickering, not bickering, but the jabs back and forth between the surfaces, right? And what science shows us now is that's actually a part of the bonding process. So yeah, you're playing these games, but when the balloon goes up, whatever, there's lots of terms for this, right? And bad things are happening. Everybody in that unit that was like calling each other names and pranking each other and all that kind of stuff pull together as one cohesive team, and the different services do the same thing. And even under fire, they could be calling each other names, cracking jokes and stuff. But they're all in it for the same reason. It's an amazing thing, right? This adaptability and flexibility. Yeah. So anyway, what else we got? Nothing.
That was it.
It's kind of like Cornelius, Yukon Cornelius from the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer thing. Pick at something, lick his pick. Nothing. That's how I feel sometimes when I'm asking for questions or comments. Nothing. Anyway, all right. So, let's see. I've got like 4 pages of notes, so let me just find where I am. Oh, okay. So I planned on starting with a story that drastically changed my perspective about mastery, because prior to this moment in time, not this one, the one I'm going to tell you about, mastery, or the word master, was just this general term, like, I'm going to have dinner. Really? What's dinner taste like? Well, it depends on what we eat, right? It's just this vague kind of thing, right? Okay, I'm going to have spaghetti for dinner. I'm going to have a nice thick cut steak for dinner, right? So dinner is a time frame, right? But again, there's this vagueness kind of thing. And so it was in my head, just like the words enlightenment or bravery or pick something, right? And so I got invited to a closed door training. Don't tell anybody. Not, I mean, it's been 40 years, but maybe he still cares. Shrey Sensei used to be, before he retired and became a consultant, he was the vice president or senior vice president of research and development for a powder coating company. Right? They make these metal powders that when you get things like bikes or whatever, and it's a metal part, and it has a color to it, or it has this texture to it, or whatever. It's been powder coated and then run through this big ass oven that bakes it on, and it keeps things from rusting. It makes it more scratch proof, those kind of things, right? So he worked for a company that made these powder coatings, and then they were sold to manufacturing companies around the world that worked the process. So like once or twice a year, he left Japan. His job was to literally travel to the international clients. He'd pick a couple, and check in to see how things were working, how the powder coating was melting onto the metals. Were there certain metals that it wasn't working so well to, or whatever? Took all these notes, took it back to Japan. They did refinement, made things that were more specific to what that client needed. So it wasn't like they made shit, sold shit, and then if the client couldn't use it, tough shit. It wasn't like that. They don't operate that way, right? So I was making it better. But what that did was it put him in Canada, or it put him in the States, in different places. And he would visit dojo, right, of students that he interacted with in Japan, or however he did it. And he would help, right, give suggestions, that kind of thing, right? He was teaching, but couldn't officially teach back in the day because Hatsumi Sensei didn't give permission for those things to happen. That's just a Japanese thing. A lot of Westerners are like, screw him, I'm gonna, which is why, anyway, why a whole bunch of things. So I was lucky enough to be invited to places like Toronto and whatever. But the first time that I met him, I got this phone call from a friend of mine who had a dojo or a class in the Bethesda, Maryland area. And I got invited down that a friend was coming in from Japan, and they were going to help us with some skills. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Don't tell anyone. Okay. I have a top secret clearance. No problem, right? I show up, and the freaking dojo is packed. Well, apparently, a lot of people would not make good ninja or CIA operatives because they can't keep a damn secret, because a third of the people in the room that were supposed to be the people in the room could not tell other people and tell them not to tell anyone. Just dumb shit stuff. Anyway, so we had this full room. And so as a part of the training, he had us all lining up in these different lines, and he would, have us do a certain role. And so we're doing side rolls, we're doing back rolls, whatever. And you do a roll, come up, do another roll, come up, that kind of thing, right? And so I come up at one point, and he's standing right in front of me. Like I come up, and he's right there, And he's got this big smile on his face, and he says, "Oh, Jesson, master of rolling." And I'm always picking my stuff apart. Most of us do, right? I mean, that's the problem with being being personal development oriented, right? And just your brain highlights and focuses on shit that needs to be fixed, which is why every once in a while we need to stop and look backwards to see how far we've come and take an assessment of things that we're better at, right? Lest we get narcissistic and just believe that we have it just because we think we do. And then we're blowing over mistakes, or we get caught up in this loop of always something to fix, always something to get better at. Now, once you understand the process, no big deal, but it it's almost like an abused child or an abused teenager, right? Where they're never congratulated, or they're never told that they did something right. It's always the wrong things, right? Now, unless you know, if the person has bad wiring and it's always that kind of stuff, you know, then that's something different. But what ends up happening mentally is we can slip into this belief that I'm never going to get this, right? It's just this is not working, right? Every time I turn around, I'm screwing something up. Okay, so we have to be careful. But he said, you know, a master of rolling, and I said, really? He nods. Yeah, I think so. Well, I hope so anyway. And then he just walks away laughing. I thought, what the hell, right? So I just go back to rolling and whatnot, but that's stuck in my head. And what I came to understand was that mastery in different contexts, right? Like being an expert at something or whatever, is tuned into a specific thing, at least in the context that he was using it, right? A master of rolling. That says nothing about your evasion skills, nothing about your leaping skills, nothing about your stealth skills. It just speaks to rolling, right? Great. Okay. So now I've got to set out to master this other thing. And then collectively, right, then we're a master in a given realm. But, you know, it's start with skills and then build up from there. And I know you guys have seen videos online and whatnot, and some people get all dressed up and other people just, you know, they do their thing. And there's this there's a written rule. It's not an unwritten rule. Like you're not allowed to critique somebody's skills or whatever online. So if they don't have a teacher that they check in with regularly, they just keep doing the same stuff. And that's what I keep seeing. I keep, you know, because they think they're doing it right. So there it is, right? And that's fine, right? You know, I'm not here to re-educate the masses. But anyway, he pointed me to this idea that being a master or being in a realm of mastery or whatever, right, is a really, really vague term. It's like saying that somebody's enlightened. About what? Are they enlightened about something? Because enlightenment is wisdom, right? Are they enlightened? Do they understand completely how something works? Or do they understand how a process works? Or do they understand how life works? Or they understand how life as a human being works? Or they, right? Okay. So, and we can peel out expert and master because experts often, again, they're in this narrow field. Right? And you got to be careful being an expert because experts have to remain an expert, right? That's why a lot of scientists, when somebody has a discovery that isn't in their purview and would mean that half the stuff they think they know is wrong, or they might have to go back to school and study some more to understand this other thing that they didn't have, they will fight that because it can't possibly be right. Why? Because I know everything about that subject. Everything? Interesting. Dog. 1 second, please. Sorry about that. All right. All right. So let's move into this. All right. So, sorry, I got thrown off track there. Let's see. Mastery spelled out by past Japanese masters in the words used to convey, right, these meanings. So let's take a look at 3 of them that the Japanese tend to use for the word master. Okay? And while they can all be translated as master, this is very similar to saying please or excuse me, pardon me, I'm sorry, that kind of thing. In English, we don't have that many words. If I say please, I could mean please help me. I could also mean please, oh, please accept this, right? Here's please. Or, there's a last, whatever. Somebody was just talking about this the other day. There's that last, I think it was a comedian I was listening to. There's that last chicken wing or whatever on the plate, right? And everybody's trying to secretly or trying to manipulate to get that chicken wing, as opposed to saying, there's one left, who wants it, kind of thing. And same thing with I'm sorry and whatnot. So in Japanese, and English speakers really have to be careful, because it's been my observation, I fell into the trap, and it's been my observation that English speakers tend to, if they see a couple of different words that mean the same thing, right, they'll pick the easiest one to say. All right. So 2 ways to say please in Japanese is, one is onegaishimasu and one is dozo. They both mean please, but Japanese is contextual. So onegaishimasu, the thing that we say at the beginning of a Bujinkan class when we bow in, right? Onegaishimasu, please assist me, please teach me. Right? It just means please, but it implies I'm asking or requesting something. Right? Dozo is also please, but it's in the context of I'm handing or offering something to someone, and it's that kind of please. They're not, well, the Japanese would not ignore. They would allow for a tourist or a gaijin or whatever, right, to get it wrong. It would be like a baby trying to speak English, and they're just throwing out words, and you get the gist, but it's not fluid communication, right? It's broken. So if we were to say, I'm sorry, pardon me, excuse me, again, they're all in context, right? Arigato gozaimasu. I'm sorry. Thank you. Excuse me, pardon me. So, sumimasen, right? Sumimasen. Pardon me, excuse me, right? Pardon my interruption. If I'm at the train station in Japan and I'm stuck between 2 possible trains, and I can't get is this a local? Is this an express? Is this actually going to stop at my stop or whatever, right? And I'm going to ask someone. I'll start off with sumimasen, and they'll say, "Ie," right? Like, don't worry about it, right? Or they'll say, "Doitashimaste," right? Don't mention it, which we normally translate as "you're welcome," so it confuses a lot of people. But sumimasen, right? Is this train, whatever, right? But if I'm walking along the track or along the platform, and I bump into that same person, right? It's not pardon me. It could be pardon me, but it's not sumimasen. It's gomenasai. I'm sorry, right? It's an apology for something happening, right? That was my fault, right? But it's still a general use kind of thing. And then there's another one, shitsure shimasu, which my students are required to learn, shitsure shimasu, which means please excuse me for my rudeness. This is used for everything from being late, having to leave class early, passing gas, not paying attention, not studying or practicing something the teacher gave you. Right? I think all students need to learn shitsure shimasu, right? Because what we think doesn't matter to a Japanese teacher, and especially the way the Japanese speak to Westerners, we think they're giving us a choice, but they have this little nuance thing that they say things in a way that softens it. You're supposed to know. Anyway, so back to these 3 things, right? So we have 3 terms. Shujin, if you're writing it out in Romaji, Shujin. Shujin. We have Meijin. Again, if you're writing it out in Romaji, Meijin, and we have Tatsujin, okay? Tatsujin. Jin, that kanji, right? Looks like a stick figure. It just means person. Okay? It's a person. So Shujin translates as master, lord, owner. Could even be used for proprietor, like of a shop, that kind of thing, right? So that's master. Meijin is an expert or a master. Tatsujin is a master or an expert, right? But here's where the nuance comes in, right? So Shujin, a master or a lord or an owner, proprietor, that kind of thing, right? They're a master or a lord over something. It's like they're controlling a realm, right? Now, does that mean we can't use it as a martial artist? No, of course not, right? Control of your body, control of your mind, right? Control of your senses, your desires, whatever, right? Self-control, right? So one who controls themselves could be a Shujin, right? Meijin, expert or master at something, okay? So they're a master of. This is used in the art world a lot. They're a master painter. They're a master at flower arranging. They're a master at meditation or whatever. Okay, so they're a master or an expert at a specific skill or within a certain realm. Okay, Tatsujin also means master, but the tatsu here, right? So in Shujin, Shu originally meant master or lord, but you get that, right? Mei means artful or excellent. So Meijin is a person who is artful or excellent at this thing that they're doing. The tatsu in Tatsujin means accomplished. It means to have reached something. It means to arrive. It also means to attain. Okay? So there were periods in Japanese history where Tatsujin was a title or a term used to identify a sword master. But Tatsujin goes back farther than that, and it points to this idea of a fully actualized human being, right? So it goes to this idea of enlightenment and whatnot. So they're accomplished, right? They've reached this goal or this benchmark, right? They've arrived. They've attained this thing. So tatsu and tatsujin is more of a quality as opposed to just being about something that I got good at, right? So anyway, right? So Shujin, Tatsujin, Meijin, right? We'll come back to that, right? So here's a question, right? How does the brain develop new habits? Because if you think about, I'm going to stay within the realm of martial arts training, right? How do the skills get in? Somebody demonstrates, we move our body, we go through this whole process, right? But how do things change? Because if I came to it with a lack of coordination, couldn't get my freaking arms to move at the right timing, couldn't get my legs to step back, so the coordination was off, whatever, right? We've got these three key principles: timing, distancing, angling, right? And there's also a fourth one, Kotsu, which is being able to see beyond the surface, right? And this is something that we talk about in Mikyo all the time, right? But so if those who say or use the term I am what I am, and like this is just me, right? I can't do anything about it, right? Then how is it that when they they learn something and they earnestly practice and whatnot, how does it happen that the coordination happens? How is it that the timing changes? How is it? Because if we're stuck with what we have, then how do we get this new thing, right? So I'm going to jump to modern science. Okay? What modern science has come to understand is that when the brain develops new habits, or for the brain to develop new habits, what allows for that to happen is something they've termed neuroplasticity, right? That's a tongue twister. So plasticity, it's malleable, right? It's like clay, and neuro, right, for the mind, right? So what we're really looking at is neuroplasticity is rewiring and strengthening the connection between nerve cells. Okay, I always say it's like building the neural pathway is like building a new. Well, this used to work before cell phones. So when we're talking about landlines or the electrical grid, right? We're running wires from point A to point B so that power flows from one point to the other. Or back in the day, right? We can make phone calls to this other area. People that lived in an area where there were no phone lines didn't have phones. People that lived in areas where there was no electrical service, just like in today's world, it's less and less because you can get satellite, but satellite internet sucks. But if it's all you got, it sucks less than not having it at all, right? So, but if you lived in an area where the lines didn't go that far, okay, you either did it on purpose or you were SOL, right? You either needed to convince other people to move around you, so it was conducive for the electrical company or the cable company or whatever to move stuff, right? So your brain, when you're developing a new habit, right, or a new skill, however you want to look at it, new behavior, right, new attitude, so a bunch of different ways we can go with this because they're all right, they're all correct. It takes time, but it has to build these pathways. And in many cases, there's pathways that are already there because it's part of your biology. But if they're not used, then the connection, the synaptic impulses that fire and whatnot, they're just not that strong. Okay, so other things that are stronger will just override it. Okay, so again, neuroplasticity, and what we're looking at doing is taking control of this process, right? Of the rewiring and strengthening connections between the nerve cells. So when a behavior, right, could be action, could be a speech pattern, right? It can be something that you say regularly, right? Could be a thought, whatever. When it's repeated, the connections between those cells change. And the more often they're repeated, the stronger the connection becomes. And that's what makes the behavior or the skill or whatever, right, more automatic, more what people would typically term second nature. Okay, so here's the thing: each time you perform a new action, let's say you just started something new, right? You started telling jokes, you started learning to tie a new knot. I remember one time I was training with Stephen Hayes, and those of us in the teachers group to help designate us within the dojo, because you just had a sea of black uniforms, right? To help designate the members of the Marishi Kai, the instructor guild, we got these Jimbaori, and they were just blue, or a certain color blue, but there was a tie at the midsection, right? The Jimbaori I bought for almost $500 a bunch of years ago, handmade. He was nice enough. Well, he did it before I bought it. I just appreciated it. But he just had these short tabs that it was modernized. There was just an eyelet and a button. Okay. But traditionally, they would have just been strings, just like on your martial arts uniform. So in addition to getting the Jimbaori, some people would just tie it, but that knot just tends to look, what's a good word? Shitty. That's a good word, right? So we were all taught this special knot that when you finish with this, you end up with a diamond that has 4 squares that make it up, and it's on its axis. Really cool, right? But learning how to do that with the fingers that can tie a shoe, but trying to that can make somebody break a sweat, right? Because it's not laying horizontally like your shoelaces. You have to do it vertically in front of you, doing it so the thing is right on the outside, right? Which is not what you're looking at. Right? So it doesn't matter, again, what we're trying to change, right? But you do this new thing, and then every time, right, you perform this new, we're just going to call it an action, habit, whatever, while trying or not trying, doesn't matter, right? To form a habit. Doesn't matter if you're trying to form a habit, or it doesn't matter if one sneaks in. Can you think of any habits that, right, that you started saying or doing or whatever, but you don't know where the hell it came from? When did I start doing that? Okay, so it doesn't matter if you try or not try. What the only key that's important is consistent reinforcement, just doing it again and again. So every time you do it, you need smaller and smaller cues or triggers to activate the same network of brain cells until eventually you don't have to think about it at all, right? There's an impetus, there's a need, the routine just fires. That's what I call, when I say that I'm talking about subconscious, unconscious things. When I say subconscious, I'm talking about things that you've put in place that operate underneath the surface. Unconscious, to me, is the stuff that operates regardless of whether you think about it or not. Because I know a lot of people that are either so lazy, so distracted, or so pick a word, right? That if their breathing wasn't unconscious, they'd have been dead a long time ago. Okay, so this is an important thing. Okay, so in our Mikyo, this was one of the earliest lessons that I got from Jikai Sensei, and when these unproductive or unintentional, accidental, whatever, things get started, right? They're given a name, right? The name is, well, the Sanskrit's not going to matter. It translates to stinking seed. And what that means is you get this seed laying there, and then when the conditions are right, it'll grow just like any other seed or plant or whatever, right? But here's the thing. Every time you do that thing again, every time you do that action, every time you say that phrase, every time you think that thought, you put another stinking seed in place. So what a lot of people misunderstand, and this is one of the things that attracts me to Mikyo a lot, and this is why I put it in single quotes, but it's why I use the phrase mind science rather than some of the other more spiritual terminology, because that's really what it was. But when we try to change a habit, we think we're changing one thing. It's kind of like when somebody comes, they bump into me at the mall or at a store, who knows, we're at a fair, it doesn't matter, right? And they say, "Hey, I used to train with you. Do you remember me?" And they were like only at the dojo for a couple of classes, a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months, right? But I've literally had thousands of people since 1989, and that doesn't count my training groups when I was stationed in what was then West Germany or anything. I've literally had thousands of people go through my programs. So I can honestly say, and this isn't to slander anybody or make anybody feel bad, if a student hasn't been around for a significant amount of time, no, I don't remember you. Okay? Now, it would have been helpful if we bumped into each other in public and whatnot, and we can reminisce. I remember, I can do the obligatory, hey, doors always open, always come back to training. I know, whatever. But I don't, right? Or the student that goes, wow, I trained with you when I was 8. How old are you now? Well, I'm 25. Do you have any clue that you don't look anything like the 8-year-old you? Because that's the picture in my head, right? As a matter of fact, the weekend before, my wife and I went to this local gathering fair in a small town, and I ran into this one mom, and my son used to train with you, and how old is he now? Yeah, no, there's no way I'm going to pick him out. And then she mentioned his name. How long was he with the academy? Well, we were only there for. Sorry, I gave her the same spiel. Right? You want to see a picture? Sure. And I looked up and said, "Yep." Couldn't pick him out of a crowd. Right? Because there's too many. My point is, the student only has one teacher to remember. The teacher has how many students to remember from their past, right? And we often do this. We forget that this is actually what's going on. This is the part of that econ. This is the part of that ultimate truth, right? The relationship, it is hierarchical. I don't care how many people are trying to tear down the system, destroy the man, fuck them, whatever, right? It's hierarchical, right? In the brain, things get cataloged and organized. We don't have to like it, right? Nobody ever said you had to like it. Don't we have a T-shirt on the pro shop that says nobody ever said you had to like it? Okay, right. So we should probably add the phrase. So get the hell going, or train, whatever. But I think anyway. So if we have somebody influential or whatever in our lives, right? We had one dad. We might have had a stepdad. One mom might have had a stepmom. Right? One grandmother on that side. Usually it's just a few things that we have to remember, right? Now remember all the people that were in your grade and we'll pick 12th grade. I mean, you have the yearbook, right? You didn't memorize everybody? Well, you only had classes with some of them. How many of them do you remember? Okay. And so there's this thing that's going on. So back to the brain and neuroplasticity. Every time we execute on that thing, that thought, that phrase, that action, we add another occurrence to the subconscious storehouse, the Laya Vijnana, for those of you in Mikyo. When we go to try to change a habit, what we see is we've got one habit. I'm trying to change this habit. What we need to understand is that we have a stockpile of repetitive doing of that thing. And this new thing we want to do, we've only done it what? Once? 5 times? Whatever. Okay? It's not until that repetition, that repetitive redundancy buildup of a new stockpile gets big enough that our brain actually starts to see a choice in like life situations under pressure, that we actually recognize, should I say that or should I say that? Right? Until that happens, and especially under pressure, what's going to come out is the thing that you think about, reaching into a jar of, I don't know, marbles or whatever, right? I'm going to reach in, I'm going to pull something out. Okay. Now, what I want to do under pressure in a self-defense situation is I want to pull out the yellow marble, because that's the technique I want to be able to do. Except the jar is full of blue marbles with only 3 yellow marbles. And under pressure, I'm going to reach in and put, what are the chances I'm going to pull out a yellow marble? Not. So we have to use the same process consciously to replace the old ones. And here's the cool thing with neuroplasticity. If you stop doing certain habits long enough, your brain will reallocate the proteins and the enzymes and all that kind of stuff that created those neural pathways to something else. It'll tear them down, which is why when you think about something you used to be able to do, and it's been years, and now you do it a different way, you have a hard time trying to do that thing. And it's right back to that rough, kind of condition that we had when we were putting in the new one, the right one, the good one. Right? Now, this is both I'm going to borrow a phrase from Monk. This is both a blessing and a curse. Okay? The blessing is you can change, right? You can do this thing. You just take control of the process. But we're not taking control of a vague, woo-woo, pie in the sky. What do some of the people say? Old idea, right? Kind of thing. We're not taking control of that, right? We're taking control of this thing that naturally and normally happens. So we're not guessing our way, right? We've got to get those things to build up and change. Okay. All right. Before I go too much deeper into this, because we're about to make a little cool thing here, but all right, a little shift. But first of all, anybody think this is cool? Okay. Anybody think this is cool? Right. The way to become a master or an expert at something is to do the thing more. Right. Anybody ever heard? Because his videos are all over the internet. Or you've been in training, or you've seen it in writing in a book you read, or whatever, right? For a lot of people, when they got bored and actually read like half a chapter because they got tired of looking at the same technique picture sequences, right? You ever hear Hatsumi Sensei say "keep going"? What's that? What's that one book? It's not Ancient Art of Ninja Warfare. What's the one that Hatsumi Sensei and Stephen Hayes and Rumiko Hayes wrote a bunch of shit? Is it Secrets of the Grand Master?
I think so, yes.
That's not the white book, right? That's the bigger book.
Right.
Okay. So in that one, they were talking about giving something a try and how students are quick to quit, right? And Hatsumi Sensei said, well, if you've given it a good try and you're just not getting it, then okay. And because that book is actually a edited transcription of audio recordings that they had just with dialogue, right? So it's like sitting in on a private conversation. And so there's little things in there like, chuckle or, whatever. Soke might have winked or whatever. There's these little things in there. And so Sensei Hayes said, you say giving something a good try, but to the Western student, giving something a good try is, 2 or 3 times, whatever. Okay. What do you mean by giving a good try? He goes, oh, no. What I mean is if you've tried it for at least 10 years and you're still not getting it, then you might want to consider doing something else. That's how a master sees giving something a good try. Anyway, so before we shift gears here, right? What do we have? Questions, comments? James is the voice of everyone.
I have not seen anything else come in yet.
Okay. I should change your last name. You're going to be James Everyman. What do you think? Yeah. All right. So I think that's pretty cool. I think that it is absolutely freaking cool that we can take control of the process and change, like literally, and this is a premise within Mikyo, to literally recreate ourselves. All right. Well, we're kind of doing it all the time. And when I say recreating, it works in 2 different directions. we're either taking charge of things. Well, we don't even have to be taking charge of things. If I move to a new location, I move across the country. My brother-in-law, I bought a plot of land in Texas, about an hour outside of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and still needs to run, water and all that kind of stuff in. But he's left the option open to my wife and I that if we want to move down there and build, there's more than enough land to go around. Not sure I like him that much, but anyway. I moved to that area and I start, interacting with the populace and stuff like that, making new friends and what. It's quite likely, whether I intend for it to happen or not, if I'm not mindful, that I'm going to take on a Texas twang that's common in that region, whether I mean to or not. Okay. Same thing with other mannerisms, choices, whatever, right? I'm going to develop new favorite foods or restaurants or playhouses or whatever, because the old options are gone, the new options are in, whatever. I may reminisce and miss things, but, right, and I'm going to be, in essence, I'm going to become a different person because of the way I'm interacting with my world. So it can happen accidentally. I often talk about it just doing it intentionally, right? But it also happens in the opposite direction as well, where the change is actually a change of diminishing returns. And what that means is we start out having lots of options, but we get, what's that term in English? We get set in our ways. And so therefore, I just eat the same food, I dress the same way, I talk the same way, I make the same choices, right? Same shit, different day, right? If I ever hear somebody say same shit, different day, I watch them for a while. Because chances are, if they're doing the same shit, thinking the same thoughts and saying the same things, guess what? Their world is the same every day. It's got to get freaking tiresome. It's got to get shitty. And nothing's going to change until they do. But they think that the world needs to change, right? So that they can keep doing what they're doing, and then everything will be fine. Well, okay, again, ultimate universal truth doesn't work that way. Okay, so it can work in either of those directions, but there's actually something else going on. And we'll stay on topic with this idea of being a master. Okay, those of you again, I keep calling back to the people in the Mikyo program and whatnot. This comes up for you guys a lot. Okay, in Ninpo itself, if you're one of my regular students, it comes up often enough. Yes, James, like, I don't know if you go through the other programs. James, what I'm going to say, no, you can't go through that program. He has access to all of them because he has to fix things for people. But I don't know how far he's doing things on one side, but in class, this stuff comes up often enough. Can you imagine how much it comes up for? Well, your girlfriend knows. She hates when it comes up again. So anyway, but there is this other thing that's going on, right? And that is, well, let me form it the phrase of a question, or phrase it in the form of a question, right? What if I told you that you're already a master? What if I told you that you're already a master? I just gave you all the science behind why that's true, but it might take a little bit of thinking to make it happen. Okay, so here are some additional questions to go along with that. Are you a master of skipping training sessions? Are you a master of complaining? Are you a master of finding the fault and corruption in the world? Like, as soon as you hear somebody's name or something new pops up, oh man, I can't help it. I jump right on my phone or jump right on the internet, track that shit down. Because you know what? They got more than me. Probably a fucking corrupt asshole. Or whatever. Right? Are you a master of ignoring your own faults? Okay. So I planned on bringing it from the dojo, and I think I forgot. But for those of you who've been around for a while, even through KUDEN, I've shown these little implements, these practice things. These were actually designed both as meditation devices and self-defense objects. Okay, in Sanskrit, Vajra; in Tibetan, Dorje; in Japanese, Kongo, Bazara, whatever. Okay, so it's this implement, but I'm going to try to hold this for those of you on video. For those of you on audio only, I'm holding. Just look up Vajra or a Kongo in the Vajrayana. So I'm trying to hold this so that all you see are 3 prongs. Right? There's actually 5 on here, but James, is that what you see? Do I have this edge on enough? Okay. So you see 3 prongs, right? So in Japanese Mikyo, one of these things, they're designed with different numbers of spokes, right, or prongs. So there's one with just one. It's called a doko, right? There's a niko, so it has 2. Right? Sanko, 3. Just goes on from there. This is a goko. There's a kyuko, right? It has 9. But the sanko, one of the symbolic representations of that, what it points to, is the channeling of thought, word, and deed, right? Collectively called the 3 mysteries. We call it the Sanmitsu, triple secrets of success, right? Where thought, intention, speech, word, right, and action or activity are all channeled in the same direction. Okay, but you'll notice that these things are 2-sided, right? 5 up here and you got 5 down here, and then you got a midpoint. Okay, the Omyodo, or the yin yang principle, is going on in this as well. Okay, so one of the reasons it's 2-sided is that one is positive channeling of thought, word, deed, right, and the negative side. Okay, because we're always successful. Right? I've talked about this in the past as well, right? Whatever we channel those 3 things to, that's what we produce, right? So this neuroplasticity is working in both directions. Okay. There is a former Navy SEAL that I follow. He's in the motivational, and he does fitness things as well. But he helps people who want to get in the military be able to pass those requirements and stuff, especially to be not just to get through basic training. He specializes in getting people to get a special operators, like a special forces contract. Okay, so he's not just messing around with people who just want to like pass a PT test with minimum standards. Matter of fact, I just mentioned, James knows how much I hate this when somebody goes, so what's the minimum standard, or what's the minimum requirements to get this thing, right? I don't know if you can see his face or not, right? Ask me. So what's the minimum that I have to do to get this thing, right? Like how, and sometimes they'll say it backwards, but we know what the meaning is. So like, how long does it take to get a black belt? Shit. Place an order right now. I will order it through Asian World of Martial Arts, or you can go online yourself and order it. And now, oh, you said earn. Okay, go mow my lawn. I'll give you a black belt. There you go. You just earned a black belt. Okay, that's not what I mean. You're an asshole. No, I'm being specific. You keep bouncing through the world in a vague way. Okay, vagueness begets vagueness, not specificity. Okay, mastery requires the other. But anyway, he has this lesson that just repeats itself, kind of like I keep repeating myself. And one of these days I'm going to go crazy. I'm going to be in a love me jacket, bouncing off the walls in a facility, because I have to keep saying the same shit to people over and over and over again. Anyway, so what this all boils down to is what we get good at what we do consistently. Okay, so that was the good news, right? Cool, yeah. Okay. Oh, wait. But we also get good at not doing things. Right? Like I'll have a student that comes to me and says, I got to take some time off. Right? I'm studying for this or whatever is going on. And I never see him ever again. Okay. Because what ends up happening is we may have a really good reason. We always have good reasons, right? And somebody with good reasons would never call those reasons excuses, right? But everybody else's reasons are, right? So they may, they start skipping class, right? I need to get this done. This is in the way, life, whatever, okay? And so they're thinking about it, right? And then it goes longer and longer. And what's happening during that time is it's not just that they're skipping class. That's not the habit. The habit is the choice to fill in the time with something else. And then eventually we get good at just seeing that time as an open window for something else. And what we don't understand is we've developed a habit of pre-booking that time or leaving it open. And so if I go to class, then okay, but there's other stuff that gets wired in as well, right? So this is what we need to understand. We get good at what we do consistently. If we don't do something consistently, then it's always going to stay shitty, or it's going to at best mediocre, right? So, but we also get good at not doing things. Okay, so remember the easier part I put back there, right? The more often I do this thing, the stronger the connection in the synaptic pathways, right? The stronger that connection between those brain cells, those nerve cells, sorry. The quicker things happen and the less, the smaller of a cue or the smaller of a trigger I need to fire that. Way back in the 80s when computers were still fairly new and all that. And a bunch of us came out of the 60s and 70s and watched them get developed. You used to push a button on what looked like a typewriter, but it was a teletype kind of thing. You push one on here, and these things, because of the machinery or the mechanism, they had a very solid click, right? And then when you did that, or you ran a punch card, or you did a couple of combination things here, what would happen, since everything was saved on magnetic reel-to-reel disc, these discs would whir around, right? So whenever somebody would have, or we would laugh at ourselves because we'd have this habit pop out, right? Unthinking, it wasn't conscious level choice, it just popped out. We called it a click whir response because we got the same processing. So just because we don't have a tape in there spinning around doesn't mean that the computer is not running a subroutine, reaching into the memory and grabbing the first thing that matches the criteria close enough. Okay? So, but remember that easier, right? So there's this thing called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is when you've got two choices or you've got two beliefs in your head about the same thing that don't match. Okay, let's stay with training. I need to train and I want to train, but I don't have time to train or I don't feel like training. Still about training, but they're non-compatible, right? They can't coexist. So what we do, again, this is the non-mindful kind of thing. What we do, we have to resolve the problem. Otherwise, we're stuck. And the brain is adaptive, so it's good at not being stuck. And ego is good at protecting you against discomfort, danger, those kind of things. So what happens more often than not with cognitive dissonance is we pick the one that's the least amount of work. So since we can't do both, we drop one, right? So again, I'm going to repeat it one more time. We get good at what we do consistently, but we also get good at not doing things, and we get great at doing a thing, anything, the longer we do it or don't do it. What that means is it becomes super freaking easy. We don't even have to give it much thought. Okay. This is something that we encounter, this cognitive dissonance. This is a central premise in one program I have for folks called Ninja Motivation and Influence. Right, James, I don't know if you can like grab the link and pop it into the chat thing for anybody that wants to take a look. But regardless of whether you're using it on other people, right, to motivate them, to influence them, and I've got something to say about the motivation here shortly, but and this has been the case every time I've done this live. From the very first time I did it live, 70% of the people that went through that program used it on themselves. That was cool. It was surprising because I thought people were like, going to jump into it because, this is awesome. I can get people to do what I want. And I think it just speaks to the kind of students that I vet and attract, I guess, right? Because they're so focused on the self-development stuff that, like I said, 70% of them used it on themselves to get over blockages and whatnot. Okay. So, actually, speaking of courses, I've got another one coming up here, and this is neither here nor there, right? Some of you guys are already signed up for it. This Thursday night, for 15 weeks, we're running through another Mikyo course called the Jusan Butsu, conventionally in the East known as the 13 Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. But I decided on the events page and whatnot that I'm working on, it'll be done, and an email will go out letting everybody know that go take a look at the upcoming stuff. But I called it 13 potentials and activities leading to enlightenment. Right? So on that, there are these 13 characters that are symbolic of either a mindset or an activity that is necessary on this path. Okay. Now, in that program, we're going to be coming at these things 3 different ways, but one of them is actually going to spell out kind of a path that's already been laid out to walk. And there is a logical order, next step thing. If you skip one, the whole thing falls apart, right? You can't get to the end by not stepping on each of the stones and doing the work, right? So I'm only going to cover a couple of them here, but out of those 13, the first 6, Fudomyo is the first one, for those of you who are in the recent thing I just did. Fudomyo, Shakyamuni, the historical Buddha, is on there. The next character is called Manjushri in Sanskrit, Monju in Japanese. The next one is Fugen Bosatsu, Samantha Bahadra. And then the next one is Jizo. And then the one after that is Muroku or Maitreya. So you don't have to know the names, okay? What I just outlined was the world bumps into me and wakes me up and makes me pay attention in a way that confuses me, because like everything was going along fine and then shit worked backwards, and now I need to find an answer to that. In today's world, you really have 2 choices. They all kind of go to the same one, but most people would jump on the internet most people would do the blue pill, right, James? Take the blue pill, go back to sleep, wake yourself up tomorrow morning and tell yourself anything you want about that thing. Blame somebody, write it off as you had a mental glitch, whatever, right? Red pill means these are references from the movie The Matrix. You're going to find out, you're going to at least do some research and try to figure out what the hell happened, right? Why did that happen that way? So you could do some research. Most people are going to jump on YouTube and see if somebody will just tell them for free, whatever. Old days, and for a lot of people in today's world, you go find a mentor who knows about that shit. Not just somebody who's read a little bit, but somebody who's producing results and whatever, right? So Fudo represents the world because of those flames, right? Banging into you. And then you go ask a teacher. Well, what the teacher gives you is what we in the Mikyo realm call transcendental wisdom. Okay. It doesn't mean woo-woo or whatever. It means they're giving you something that just it's not conventional thinking. What the hell, right? So you're able to see beyond something. You get a glimpse of how things really work underneath the form. Excuse me. And so you get these lessons, right, in the context of training, right? You could have seen a Jackie Chan movie. You could have seen a Bruce Lee movie. You could have seen somebody get their ass handed to them on the street. But there was something in the world that made you want to take up martial arts or self-defense training, or at least explore it more. So you went and bought somebody's book, or you watched somebody's video, you started learning lessons, that kind of thing. And so they're giving you these lessons, okay? So the lessons are, I never knew that. Holy shit, right? Transcendental. It transcends what is your everyday, okay? So they give you these lessons, they give you these skills, and then the next character, this Fugen, this Samantha Bahadra, this character represents, in Mikyo terms, meditation and practice. In everyday terms, thinking about it, processing it, trying to understand the strategy and the tactics, and practicing. Jizo, the next character, he's actually a bald head, staff, dressed like a monk, robes, that kind of thing, right? He represents discipline. Right? I have to do this thing. If I want to understand this, if I want to develop these skills, I have to do this thing consistently, regularly. Motivation, feeling, want to, don't want to is a non sequitur. It doesn't matter. I want this thing. I need to understand this, or I need these skills so I don't get my ass handed to me, right? So I'm going to continue that meditation, pondering, studying, practicing, or whatever, right? Because I have to establish that habit. It has to become consistent. And then the last character I'm talking about is this Maitreya, this Moroku. I have it. For those of you on video, it's this guy right here, okay? Minus the hand in the back. Right? He's normally just sitting on a throne or whatever. But what you need to understand is that these things are nothing but symbols on top of symbols, as in like symbolic references. So one leg is hanging down and one leg is still crossed right here, as if they're still in meditation. Okay. Hands in meditation pose. This one's it's a compassion kind of reference, but it's that's important. Okay. Maitreya is known in Mikyo as the Buddha to be, the Buddha to come, the enlightened one coming next. Okay. When you develop the discipline to do what needs to be done, your attainment of the goal, your becoming of the Tatsujin, is almost guaranteed. I say almost because you could die before that. There's things in the world called viruses and bacteria and inattentive drivers and whatever. Okay? But he has one leg down because he's about to stand up. When the conditions are just right, they will stand up. Now, that's 6. There's 7 more beyond that one, and there's a whole bunch of other things to it. But there's a logical transition. Something sparked in me that I wanted help. I went to somebody, and the help they gave me was stuff I didn't know before. And then I work with that, right, for more than a day or 3. I plug in consistency, disciplined action, and do it until I don't have to think about it anymore. Right? We have a saying in the dojo, we don't do things until we get them right. What do we do, James? That's right. He's having glitch problems. We do it until you can't get it wrong. Because under pressure, If you need to think about it, you die. As a matter of fact, I have a card somewhere. It used to be on my office door, and I don't know what happened to it. But it was a saying from Hatsumi Sensei. If you cannot do what you cannot do when you must, you'll die. And it sounds like it's a what do those people say on my videos, right? That's that like backwards twisted ninja BS. But what it means is if you half-ass your training, and so you can't do that thing well, and you certainly can't do it under pressure, when that's the thing that you need, well, then the universe spits out justice. So, but there's this thing, right? And the big problem here for a lot of folks is that they try to will themselves, or other people who are trying to motivate them try to guilt them into doing what they need to do. Right? That may work for a little bit, but it doesn't work for very long. Right? It doesn't work for very long, and we just talked about that. It doesn't work for very long because we've got all those other habits. We've got cognitive dissonance. We don't know how the process works, and or we're looking for things to feel good. I have to feel like practicing. I have to feel like changing my life situation so that I have more freedom and resources to do this other thing that I want to do, whatever, right? So I'm going to continue on with that here in a little bit, but I want to switch over to 3 ways to make the change. But before that, if James is still there, any questions, comments, anybody toss anything out before I move on? He's looking at you people. Oh, while he's looking, don't forget, this Saturday from noon to 5, that's August 3rd, from noon to 5, from the dojo, live from the dojo, right? You can be at the dojo or you can do virtual. I've got that introduction to the katana, to the samurai sword that we're doing. We're covering everything from etiquette to drawing, resheathing. We're doing some Tameshi Giri. Obviously, if you're not there, you're going to have to watch it on screen and just take notes about the tips I'm giving to folks, because while they're getting the practice, you'll get the benefit of mistakes or critiques and things like that. One of my guys, Mike Guzik, he's a priest. At the bottom of his emails, he has this little quote. It says, "Learn from other people's mistakes, because you might not live long enough to learn from yours." I think that's freaking brilliant. Anyway, right. So anything, James? Any questions, comments? No? Well, I guess you're not James Everyman anymore. No? Got to be relegated to James Anyman. Anyman, anyone, any whoa man, speak up, whatever. Okay, all right. So remember that click word response. Okay? This is going to fire a lot when you're trying to do this thing. But if the goal is mastery, now if the goal is good enough and you're still listening to this drivel, right? I don't know. You're avoiding something. It's not me. Right? But if we're aiming for these things, we have to catch ourselves doing things. So these are everyday things. And what I found was, well, I keep using the term training. What I realized, let's pick an aspect of training, stealth walking, right? Every once in a while, somebody asks me, when are we going to work on stealth? Every class. Well, we haven't done any stealth movement. Every time we walk, stealth. Every time we pick something up or put it down or pull out a chair. How about not pulling out a chair? How about lifting it, repositioning it, and putting it down, right? We're always working on it. Okay? Stealth is muffling, concealing, or mitigating sound. Sound is created by friction. Stop causing friction. That would solve a whole lot of other problems too. But what I found was the skills and the what in Japanese is known as the kihon no kihon, the fundamentals of the fundamentals. So you take any fundamental skill or exercise, forward roll, stepping back into ichimonji, whatever, okay? That's not the kihon no kihon. I mean, it could be, but there's one beneath that. It's how you move your legs. It's how you shift from position to position. It's how you lower yourself into that forward roll, or how you use your legs to reach out for that dive roll and then retract your legs, those kind of things. So this is limb extension and retraction. It's walking, it's posture, all this kind of, so everything that we do is training. Everything. If our ability to walk is screwed up, or we've got some kind of weird thing going on, that's going to affect all of our taijutsu. Okay? Now, if it's permanent, that's recognizing your limitation, and you're going to have to work with it. So, how do I work with that so that it doesn't affect me? Like, I've got a guy been training with me since 1990. He used to help get cattle onto train cars. He used to do logging. He was a farmer, whatever. He's had fucking pieces of tree fall on him. He's had a steer slip its hooves out from under itself, getting on the train car on that wooden floor and fall up against him, pinning him to the wall and whatnot. So he don't move so he doesn't move the same way that he used to. It's way limited range of motion in his shoulders. So guess what? I don't expect the same thing from him that I expect from the 20-year-olds. Now, it doesn't mean I water things down. It means that we pull uke nagash and things like that from lineages that he can do. I don't expect him to do what somebody that has full range of motion and not a lot of scar tissue or bones that healed, misplaced and whatnot. Got to work with what he has, okay? But that's not the same as the person who has got an owie and they won't do their physical therapy. And so I got a limitation, sensei. Okay, well, right. I have a limitation too, right? I have a weight issue and I have severe degeneration in my knee, so I can't sit in seiza. I can barely handle zagamai, okay? And my teachers were very clear, okay? If this can't be fixed, then you have to understand that there's going to be certain skills and certain techniques you're not going to be able to do. Yes, sensei. So I either find a workaround, or if that situation ever arises, I do my best to take him out with me. Okay? So the reason I just said all that was because I'm going to give you three exercises. Yeah, 4 exercises maybe. Okay? And so these are the things that it doesn't matter if it's training. It doesn't matter if it's, who knows, fixing a relationship, if it's getting better at whatever, breaking out of a habit pattern that keeps me in the same occupational category, right? Because again, you know, I get it, right? I'll talk about these as they come up because they're a part of these different things, right? So here are ways to make the change that leads toward mastery, or at least it's that one new step today that's different, that if I can just do it again tomorrow, right? Now, Mikyo, any new thing that's done, right? Skip over a page because I may have skipped over something here. Oh, yeah, I did. It was about the difference between what the ancients would say about doing things, right? The consistency, and what everyday life. Okay, So if you know what an uchideshi is, uchideshi is a live-in student. Okay, so uchideshi, or a monk or a nun, right, at a monastery, convent, that kind of thing, right, versus modern life. Okay, so the ancients, well, how do I get good at something? They'll just say repetition. Hatsumi Sensei said, keep going, right? And they pointed to discipline. In today's life, right? So basically, for an uchideshi or for a monk, you're just made to do it. Here's meditation time. From here to here, when the gong rings again in that space, you're meditating, or you're doing this ritual practice, or you're cleaning, or whatever, right? You're just made to do it. Right? Well, what if I don't want to do that? Well, there's the mountainside, right? Don't let the trees kick you in the ass on the way out. Right? So the difference in organizations like that is that they don't let somebody in or somebody stay very long that's going to poison the rest of the group. Okay? So they're made to do it. It's expected, right? But in modern life, even for dojo students, okay, dojo student versus the long distance student, okay, you have to make yourself do it. Okay? Dojo student, the teacher laid out the schedule. Here's when the classes are going on. You're making yourself do it isn't about making yourself go to training. It's making yourself stick to the schedule. It's developing the habit of going to class twice a week, minimum. Right? That's why I always tell white belts, right? What's your first goal? Black belt or yellow belt, whatever. No, that's not your first goal. Your first goal is to develop the habit of going to class consistently. Right? Scheduling the time, keeping the time. Right? Everybody tends to look too far down the line. Right? If you can't establish the simple habit, well, then you're not going to class. Right? So, and again, consistently, right? So Westerners, where in Mikyo or in the Uchideshi thing, right, martial arts and whatnot, things are expected. To Westerners, to long distance students, even to close students or whatever, right? It's kind of optional, right? And what it all comes down to is, I'll quit if he's too mean to me, or he's too pushy, or makes me do stuff that I don't want to do. Okay. Now, the reason I backed up is because that's part and parcel for a couple of these changing things. So, first change: positive self-talk rather than negative talk. Okay. I can't. I don't feel like it. Whatever. Doesn't matter. Change it to something else. Right? Change it to, I want to master that skill. Right? I'm going to get this stuff no matter what. That was like one of mine. Right? But you got to figure a way to change it. So, and let me be very clear. This is all going to be, it's going to feel really weird. It's going to feel like it's not you. It's going to feel fake. Of course it is, because it's flying in the face of that stockpile of all the times that you described you the way you are, which is why we can't make any change, because we're not putting any other options in there, and we're not working them until they become workable options. Okay? So point here is change the dialogue, right? So I don't care if it's thoughts in your head or thoughts that come out of your mouth. This is right speech. This is part of the three mysteries. It's part of the Sanmitsu, right? You're either buying into Nijutsu or you're just doing stuff. Right? So remember, the voice in your head is a wired habit pattern. Science has already shown that 90% of the thoughts you had today are the same as the thoughts you had yesterday and the day before that. And if we don't become more mindful and make change, they'll be the same thoughts we have tomorrow. No change is going to come out of that. What about that 10%? That's because things were variable in the world, right? We just got really, really good at being this version of me because it's comfortable. It's the least amount of pain that I'm willing to put up with. Okay, so this is important as well, right? Whether we use this term or not, or whether we just say it's really tough, change, the circumstances I'm in, however it gets described, right? This BS of victimhood self-talk only works in a social structure or a safety net, right? That allows for it, that allows for us to be this way and not die of hunger, starvation, lack of electricity, whatever, right? The rule of nature is figure it out or die, right? So now this is an I believe based on my study, based on my observation, based on my research. This is how things kind of work for me, right? Are there other people out there with different beliefs? Could there be contradictory information? Sure, right? But I believe that this is why so many fight to preserve that kind of social structure, right? We're all in this together, all that kind of stuff. That's not true. Human beings banded together millennia ago because everything out there could eat us or kill us, and we were the smallest thing on the, well, relatively speaking, right? But right, they fight to preserve that kind of thing because it's easier, right? I talk about guilt and feeling bad for not doing what you should be doing or what I should be doing or what any of us should be doing earlier, right? So many people feel that when they miss training, they feel guilty or they feel off or they have that feeling like they know they should or whatever, right? When they miss training, when they screw up, whatever it is, okay? But they just learn to live with it. And they make a decision to compartmentalize any voice that wants you to be better or to be a better version of yourself. And they pop on the click word reasoning, procrastination, self-doubt, whatever, switch. Right? It's just, again, cognitive dissonance is going to pop up and I got to let go of the one thing. Well, since I'm not in training, getting whacked on and feeling that kind of pain, what's the pain in the moment? The pain in the moment is the guilt or the shame or the self-doubt or whatever about even starting and going. So what's the quickest way to eliminate that? Turn on Netflix or go do something else or get really good. And this is a habit pattern as well. You use one habit pattern to drown out or to ignore the other one. You just drop it. And we get really, really good at it. Okay? Really good at it. Okay? And luckily, those thoughts and those feelings only come up every once in a while. So as long as we don't surround ourselves with people that constantly remind us that we're not doing what we should be doing, we're good at that too, then it only has to pop up every once in a while. And then we can either ignore, yell at, think the other person an asshole, whatever, because they disturbed my peace, man. You're bringing me down. Right? So that's one, right? One is changing the internal chatter, and the dialogue, right? So, and again, you have to replace the stockpile. So what I did was every time I caught myself saying something, either out loud or in my head, I already had pre-scripted things for that. And if I didn't, I would stop, think about how I could just flip that, just reverse it. What's the opposite of that thing, right? And then I would say it minimum of 3 times. Usually, though, I would do it 5 times because I need to overwhelm the stockpile, right? Or otherwise, if I'm doing 1 for 1, I'll never freaking catch up. Right? So that's 1. 2, set aside time for personal work, personal development. schedule the time. Okay, doesn't matter when. Find time that fits your schedule, and I don't want to hear that there's no time. Just don't tell me, right? Just okay. Um, my my wife works a full-time job at one hospital. She does a part-time project at another hospital. She teaches 4 nights a week, so she literally leaves the hospital, has a quick dinner break, and then goes to this local community college and teaches 4 nights a week. And she also teaches for the University of Phoenix online, usually 2 or 3 classes at the same time. And spends time with me. Years ago, we were doing stuff with the kids. She comes home. She feels guilty when she doesn't make dinner, whatever, right? Yeah, I can cook too, okay? But it's something she enjoys, right? But she'll get a student that will turn in their paper late and have every freaking reason in the world. You don't understand, man. And this is what it boiled down to. She will say, look, the standards are the standards. You knew this when you enrolled, okay? Yeah, but you don't understand. I have a job and I have a family and I have all these things. And then she'll usually either with a smile if she's speaking to them or just an email response. You're right. I can't possibly understand. I have a full-time job in this department at this hospital at this, and she'll lay these things out. So, and then it was a doctorate degree. She just finished 2 more master's degrees and she's exploring 2 more. I don't know what to tell you, man. Anyway, right? But she'll say, I've got these things. Oh, and by the way, I'm earning my degree as well. So if I can do it, you can do it. And if not, you need to reconsider your career choices. Because if you're trying to bail on this to get the degree, what employer can trust you to follow through on a project just because you can't manage your time or you can't whatever, okay? And I know nobody wants to hear these things. Right? I didn't either until I became a different person. Okay, so again, doesn't matter when, but consistently, right? And it should be 30 minutes. I know for my students, it says 15 minutes of practice a day, but that also counts for the fact that they came to class twice that week, minimum, for an hour. So it balances out. But especially for long distance students, 30 minutes. Okay. And I don't care what you do in that 30 minutes. Read, meditate, walk, stretch, sunshine, pick something. Okay. Because until you get in the habit of doing the thing or doing something that reinforces the goal, until you get in the habit of holding yourself accountable to doing the work when you scheduled yourself to do the work, nothing else is going to matter. Okay. So again, doing this, right, this will eventually, anybody, I'm sure a bunch of you guys train, so I'm singing to the choir. But James, let me ask you, right, because you train consistently. Then James ended up with a different project and stuff. So now, like, it seems to me, maybe not to him, but half the week that he used to train, there used to be a couple extra days in there for training. He's not, because life kind of pulled him in a different direction, right? I don't know if it's equalizing yet, James, but when you stopped making it to class on, and I understand the reasons, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, whatever it was, right? Did you have a weird feeling when you weren't doing that thing at that time? Yeah. So what will eventually happen with this consistency is it'll lead to a feeling that you're missing something or something's off, or you might even get aggravated. That's training time, goddammit, right? And while you may have had a fire that you need to put out, what will happen is you will find a way to make up for that thing. but only with consistency. Because until it becomes a habit, until the neural network gets strengthened, and it takes less, what I say earlier, less cues and or less of a trigger to get you to do that thing, right? So you need to set aside time, right? 30 minutes. And this may mean, right? This could mean that that's 30 minutes less sleep. I want to hear it. 30 minutes less TV, 30 minutes less scrolling, less video game playing, whatever it is. Okay? I want to hear it. Whatever we do the most, we have decided that that's more valuable and more important than something that may come out of our mouth that we say is important. Right? And I'm not going to use the old cliche that actions speak louder than words. It's not about that, because the actions could be the words. Right? Okay. All right. So that was number 2, right? Maybe I do only have 3 here. So third one is change your intention. Okay. I also hold a belief, and I thought it was just me working some mental gymnastics until I started listening in on other like really uber way more like on top of things than me. And there's this thing that it's called by different names, but it's the motivation myth, right? That people don't train because they don't feel like it. Okay, so here's what I got from the Navy SEAL. Train because you don't feel like it. As soon as you get that feeling of I don't feel like it, train because you don't feel like it. Okay, and no, that's not doublespeak, right? When you do something you don't want to do, that's motivation. When you push yourself to do something, okay? But there's science behind that. But wait, there's more, right? So part of your brain, right? Anterior mid cingulate cortex or cingulate cortex. I don't know. It's part of your brain. How about that? This part of your brain grows larger when you do things you don't want to do. And the harder they are and you do them, the more it stimulates that. Okay. But this part of your brain is connected to and related to how hard the work or exertion feels. The smaller it is, the more even the smallest things that you have to do makes you feel like that freaking teenager that just wants to lay around and sleep to the crack of noon, right? And just, right? What do you want from me now? Right? The smaller it is, the more aggravation when you have to do something. But the more you do, the more you can do, and the more you'll want to, because of the relationship this part of your brain has with hard stuff. That's motivation, right? It literally fires, it is part in firing dopamine and some of these other things. The pain reliever drugs, the what are they called? What the hell are those things called that your brain the endorphins, right? All these kind of things. It doesn't necessarily feel good, but you don't mind it as much. And the more you push yourself to do things that you don't feel like doing, you don't want to do, it grows more and it changes your relationship to difficulties. Okay. So this in and of itself produces more of the qualities that warriors have always been known for. Things like commitment, courage, right? Even if it's just the courage to try new things, tenacity, right? Being determined to make something happen, persistence, never giving up, never quitting. Those kind of things are tied into the size of this part of the brain. And that part of the brain only grows through hardship. And some of us grew up during periods like that, right? And you became resilient. You learned how to do things. You were able to put up with stuff that other people whined and bitched and complained about. You were just like, could be worse. You just keep on doing your thing, right? And then, as one of my Jewish students in Israel says, God forbid we get comfortable, because the growth stops when we stop challenging ourselves. Okay? This is what I mean by that transcendental wisdom. This is what I mean by that counterintuitive stuff. It doesn't make any sense. Why would it grow through hardship? Just like your hands get calloused with doing hard work. Just like your brain gets more resilient. At the very beginning of this episode, I talked about when I was in the military, and Dave knows this, right? Whether you're going through basic training or then they put you back through NCO school to become a non-commissioned officer, and it's like being back in basic training all over again. Except I think it's worse because they know that you've developed some resiliency, right? And so it's like a booster shot, right? And then the picking and goading and constant, like, shit that the guys are doing back and forth, and girls too. It builds that resilience. It builds that ability to either let shit fall away that's not important, right? But it also develops skill sets and quickness. Oh, we just call it a quick wit, but it's the ability to have comebacks really, really fast. Why? Well, because you just got better at processing it, coming up with a funnier response or what, and just tossing it back out there, right? It's like a kid first year on a baseball team, barely trying to get the glove under the ball to catch, and then they got to get the ball into the hand, and then they got to figure out who the hell they're supposed to throw it to and whatnot. Next thing you know, the kid's in high school ball or college or something like that, and ball hits, it's in the other hand, and it's already going where it needs to go because the brain is processing so many things at one time. It has to. The pressure of the game, the speed and the requirements and the deadlines and the time. So you speed up. Okay? And you make mistakes, and that creates hardship, right? And now I got to get through the self-regulation of my emotions, because it was my fault that they lost the game, but not really, because who else can I blame? And you take on those things and shit changes, right? Shit changes. Okay. So anyway, what else do I have? I'm saying a lot. I think it's because I was talking to Mike for over an hour earlier. There it is again. God damn. We'll just kind of open it up to last minute questions or comments, and then we'll wrap this up. Don't forget, Sword Seminar, noon to 5 Eastern time this Saturday. An email will be going out either later tonight or tomorrow. It's I've got 2 of them going out now. I do a weekly digest of things you might have missed, articles, whatever, and then what I'll be doing moving forward. So those things are in. If you have not signed up for the Jusan Butsu program and you're interested in that kind of thing, I had a glitch over the weekend with getting the Fudo Myo recordings out to people, and so I was going to re-release that to other people who might be interested in it. And I went into the information at the end of the program about the Jusan Butsu thing, and I was only going to be holding the discount that I had until Saturday night at 11:55, and well, here we are, Monday evening at 10 p.m. Eastern time. So I'll send the stuff out about the Fudo for anybody that might want to go through that program again, or you can just pull a Hail Mary, jump into the Jusan Butsu, and the Fudo Myo program will be in there as a bonus, as well as the 3 mysteries thing, and the KUDEN. We did the KUDEN, right? The 5 breathing methods, 5 rings. So they'll be in there as well. Pretty much jumps on this longer thing. It'll be a fun ride. We're just going to be looking at different aspects of ourselves. We're also going to be looking at these things as universal symbols to recognize them in the world. And then in Nikyo, there is a secret to this path, which I started to allude to, but if you don't understand the path as it lays out, it's going to be really, really difficult to use it that way. But it's a roadmap, and we're going to go into that as well. There will be weekly exercises and I don't like using the word assignments, but self-work, right? Because the idea will be to bring these aspects of ourselves that these are symbolic representations of, to bring them out to work on them. Oh, I don't know, for that 30 minutes a day that we're going to set aside for ourselves, right? I don't care if you do it first thing in the morning. I don't care if you do it over your lunch break. I don't care if you do it at 1 a.m. after everybody's asleep. You can't. I don't care. Okay. Mox nix. Matters not. Okay. So I think I gave James enough time to collect up all the questions and the plethora of comments that have come in. That reminds me of the Three Amigos. Plethora. What does plethora mean? Surely you would not tell me that I have a plethora of gifts. What we got?
I don't see anything. I was just checking through my phone to make sure.
Shit, I put him to sleep again.
I wasn't missing anything with my system issues. I don't see anything.
Your system issues? What are you, gas?
Among other things, yeah.
Maybe that's the problem with your computer. Okay, just before I wrap this up, coming up here, I don't know if I'm going to start it next episode or the one after that, I am going to be doing interviews, but instead of doing interviews with like top celebrities and whatnot, because people show up because they're starstruck, I'm going to be doing interviews with some of my best students. And what I mean is the ones, I don't mean they're necessarily best skill-wise or whatever, but commitment, that have worked through a bunch of these things. And, you know, I've got this series of questions or whatnot that pretty much be fed out to all of them. But this won't be like episode 200 where I might have, James, 5, 6 people joining me. This will be just a dialogue back and forth, teacher to student kind of thing. So my hope is that folks will see that their situation isn't as unique as they think it is. And even if it is, they'll come up with some ideas, because I have my own path that I walk, right? But the students have had to be creative to solve their own individual things. So maybe they'll, you know, come up with an idea or 3 that you can use. And that's the idea. And who knows, maybe at some point in the future, you and I will be the one having the dialogue back and forth on the episode. Okay. Still going to be same learning, still going to be the same education kind of stuff. I just want to do like a teacher to student, just a dialogue back and forth, except instead of me giving all the answers out, I'll be the question guy and they'll be answering. Okay. So, and then of course, you know, there'll be back and forth dialogue. I mean, you know, but the most of the ideas and most of the answers and all that, that's going to come from them. So I know I don't know many people doing it this way, but whether it's popular or not doesn't matter, right? I'm going to do it anyway. So James doesn't know it yet. Yeah, he does. I'll put him in the hot seat for more than just like being James Everyman. All right, that's it. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I will talk to everybody again next time on KUDEN. Get more of KUDEN Radio. Subscribe through your favorite podcasting site or join our clan of serious modern warriors at onlineninjaacademy.com.